exactly the newspapers are saying. Also, during the program, the Drift Conversation segment, part of it, we are going to have a conversation with an art and event curator. You don't want to miss that particular conversation. Start engaging us on our socials at EBN TV, at TV_EBN, that is on Instagram. You're live across the social media platforms, that is on Facebook and as well as on YouTube. And you can as well send us your feedback through our SMS line, that is 23059. Now let's get started. The Interreligious Council of Kenya has tonight, or rather yesterday, called for justice, dialogue and peaceful coexistence, accusing the state of turning dissent on the Finance Bill 2024 into a murderous chaos characterized by incessant demonstrations, abductions, and forced disappearances and extrajudicial killings. The clergy expressed concerns that Kenya is a very sad and dangerous state, and she finds herself in the middle of a fight by dominant political elite to acquire, protect, and consolidate political and economic power, which threatens to tear the nation apart. The Interreligious Council called on President William Ruto to restore public trust by ensuring senior perpetrators of violence and financial scandals face the law. They also want politicians compelled to immediately cease using religion and negative ethnicity for political mobilization. Right, moving on, in a span of days, government leaders have taken to the media to instruct police to shoot to kill and shoot the leg, seemingly a response to demonstrators taking place in the country that have in recent times turned chaotic due to gun invasion. Belgat Member of Parliament and Defense Committee Chairperson Nelson Koech is the latest to add the list after reiterating remarks made by President William Ruto, but a twist asking police to shoot and kill rather than to shoot to injure. Koech further mentioned that the violent protesters will be arrested and be charged for terrorism or incitement to and facilitation of terrorism due to their actions that lead to loss of lives and damage the residential houses, commercial buildings and investment properties.
Na mimi nataka niseme na nishukuru Rais William Samoei Ruto. Wakati jana umesema shoot but do not kill. I want to repeat it here. In fact, shoot and kill. You cannot have someone coming after your life and you do not want to shoot and kill. You cannot have someone who is going to terrorize you and your family and you are telling me you cannot shoot and kill. You cannot have someone who is coming after your businesses armed and with weapons and you want to tell me that you cannot use shoot and kill. The Constitution, the Police Act has given the police the powers to use their arms where they have evaluated the risk of their lives is in danger. And I want to say, these people have been terrorizing people. Anyone who wants to go to a protected area like State House is not an ordinary person. That is a criminal. That is an armed person that must be dealt with equal force. And the only force that applies to such people is to shoot and kill. If you think that the government is sending goons and assassins to attack people's property and investment, why do you have a problem when the government then goes after the people they have sent, as you claim? Watch, we will arrest everyone, and I can tell you they are terrorists, and they are going to be charged as either facilitating terrorism or they are terrorists themselves. Yule mama ambaye alichomewa biashara yake ya county supermarket alifanya makosa gani? Opuzi yenu mnatuambia sijui one term ya nani? Nani alikuambia sisi ndio tutakaa one term? Kibaki hakukaa one term, Uhuru hakukaa one term. Sisi umeona wakati imetufikia ndio sisi ni washenzi tukae one term. Tunapiga mbili fululizo.
Mtu ambaye anaenda kuchoma biashara ya mtu mwingine, mtu ambaye anachukua moto anaenda kuchoma biashara ya mtu, anaenda kuchoma mali ya watu wengine, mtu kama huyo apigwe risasi miguu, aende hospitali, akienda kotini. Yes. Wasimuue lakini wapige hii miguu ivunjike ndio aende kotini, aende hospitali, akienda kotini.
Right, moving on, President William Ruto has challenged leaders, encouraging youth to take to the streets in protest to offer them a better plan for solving their issues instead of inciting them of violence. The president urged his opponents to provide better solutions to the many challenges facing the young people besides empty sloganeering. Now, President William Ruto said the constitution obligates him to protect the lives and properties of all Kenyans, a duty he said he would fully discharge without fear or favor.
I want my plan to be tested on employment of young people, on dealing with the issues of young people. I want my plan to be tested against that of my competitors. Yeah? Because they don't have a plan. If you ask them, they don't have a plan. They will tell you Kasongo, oh, sijui nini, nothing. Sijui kama naelewana. Tuko pamoja? And so, I want to say this, and I'm very proud to be in the middle of young people. People wamejituma, you know? People who have come from different backgrounds, gone through difficulties, they've gone through challenges, but they've stayed focused. They've stayed on course. And today, we are celebrating Nairobi United. And therefore, it breaks my heart when people who have no plan for the young people of our nation take them to the streets, abuse them in the streets, misuse them in the streets, and we end up with mayhem, rape, destruction of property, destruction of businesses, because there are people who have no plan for the young people of our nation. They have no known or credible plan. They sing about the young people of Kenya. They talk about Gen Zs because they want to use them politically. I want to tell those people who have no plan, shame on them. They should be ashamed of themselves that they have taken advantage of our young people.
Right, moving on, Nairobi Senator Edwin Sifuna has faulted President William Ruto's government for shoot to kill and shoot to injure orders, saying it is ignorant, unconstitutional and against moral standards. While at the floor of the Senate, the ODM SG said the cost of extrajudicial killings was too high to bear and the victims are not able to make a statement on the ballot to come 2027 since they are deceased.
All of us must agree that if decisions are being made democratically at an election, can we guarantee that all of us get to that election? Because you can't tell me to wait for you at the ballot and then you make sure I don't get there. Is Albert Ojwang supposed to vote from the grave? There's no such polling station. So when you talk about a state officer standing up and saying you can shoot people, as if people don't die from gunshot wounds. Honorable Speaker, we saw Rex Masai, the young man who was killed during the protest, was shot in the leg. So how can you tell people to shoot people in the leg as if those injuries are sustainable injuries? So, Honorable Speaker, we want to make it very clear that as a country, we have totally lost our way. And we will not have a conversation with someone telling us to wait for 2027 when he's not giving us a chance to get to 2027. He has become an existential threat for this country, and he must go as soon as possible. I thank you.
That I am probably the least qualified to offer any advice to the executive, the national executive, or even the county executives. But as a speaker, I want to plead with the national executive, led by His Excellency the President. I really want to plead that as a speaker, we tone down rhetoric, we tone down our speeches, we be careful the things that we say in public. For good reasons, as Speaker. Because if our president then says certain things in public, chances are that some people will react to those things. They will answer him. That exchange, as Speaker, is not good for us. This country needs serious healing and tolerance.
Right, Kiharu Member of Parliament Ndindi Nyoro has blamed the government for the kills, loss of lives and destruction of property witnessed during Monday's Sabasaba protest, saying it must take full responsibility for the events that unfolded. Speaking in Wanjegi, Kiharu on Thursday, July of 10th, Nyoro pointed out alleged lapse in the country's security stratum. He said the national security apparatus was failing Kenyans dispute millions being expended on them. Now, lawmaker wondered why the National Intelligence Service did not raise the accusation, rather the occasion, to prepare the country for imminent security challenges on the Sabasaba Day.
I have heard the governor of Kajiado confessing the people who meted mayhem in the towns in Kajiado County are not locals. The people of Nakuru, they are very eloquent on the fact that wale watu walichoma Nakuru sio watu wa Nakuru. Pale Kirinyaga, wale watu walifanya hizo jambo sio watu wa Kirinyaga. Hapa Murang'a tunajuana karibu sisi wote, hapa Murang'a town. Wale watu walifanya hizo maneno sio watu wa Murang'a. The government is squarely responsible for either omission or commission. Na mwacha kupea Wakenya tu story mingi kila wakati. We can see through the lies. We can see through, and we know for sure either the government was involved or it abetted those crimes and criminalities. Siku ya Monday ni serikali peke yake ilikuwa inalinda mabarabara zetu zote. Kama ni serikali ililinda mabarabara, wale walipita kuchoma mali ya watu, walipita wapi? Walipita wapi? Juzi tumeona mtu mkubwa mmoja ya serikali ati anaenda kuangalia ile mambo imeharibika pale Nairobi. Na kwa sababu wametunisha akili ya Wakenya sana, ati anaenda anasema hii supermarket imeibiwa na yeye mwenyewe akaweka IDs kama 50. Where did we ever see this? Going into a supermarket, wanachukua vitu katika supermarket, wanajiandikisha ati na wanaacha ID. Mmeona hiyo maneno ile hoya? Some of the narratives being crafted are crafted using government machinery, using government resources, both human resources and monetary resources. Na pesa ya Wakenya hatutakubali itumike ati serikali yenyewe ndio inaleta narratives za kugawanya Wakenya. Kama mtu anataka watu wagawanyike, aende agawanye kwake, sio kwa Wakenya.
Right, there was tension outside the Lions Girls High School on Thursday as outrage alumni staged a demonstration of allegations that a male teacher has been molesting students for an undisclosed period. Zahra Nechesa, an alumni advocate, said the group plans to sue the school's management for allegedly shielding the teacher and prioritizing the institution's reputation over student safety since 2011. The Parents Teachers Association, that is the PTA chairman, confirmed that a committee has been formed in collaboration with KUPPET. The Ministry of Education and the alumni has launched an investigation into the shocking revelations following an expose by African Uncensored. The committee is expected to table a report by the end of next week.
Mr. Peter Ayiro be immediately suspended from all his duties, including teaching, extracurricular activities, and CU patronage, pending the outcome of these investigations. The school conducts mandatory sensitization to the students on sexual abuse, predatory behavior, and self-reporting mechanisms in close collaboration with alumni professionals from relevant fields. The alumni, eternally bonded to the school, have a lifelong interest in the safety and well-being of future generations to the school. Finally, that the school provides access to psychological support and trauma counseling to the students.
We stand for justice, and as parents we are going to facilitate that. When this thing came out on Friday, the parents, we met together, of course, with the school administration, and as parents' initiative, we have an ad hoc committee to look at it for safeguarding of the girls, for the current and for the future.
Right, moving on, popular TikToker Kenan Mayo, who was arrested on Wednesday evening by DCI officers at his business premises on Kimathi Street, is currently held at Muthaiga Police Station. He was taken into custody after hours of questioning at DCI headquarters. Mayo's family says they have not been informed of the specific charges against him. However, a tweet by the DCI says he was arrested for allegedly inciting violence against police officers through a video posted on his TikTok account.
Hizi stima hapa itapigwa na stima. Si utoi kitu kwa stima kwanza. Relax basi. Si utoi kitu kwa stima. Relax. Just relax. Tulieni bwana, mnaweza bila shida.
Tumeongea, ameniambia na shida, aliojiwa tu, hajapigwa, hajafanywa anything. Yangu ni kuwa ni ujumbe kwa serikali kuwa haya mambo ya vijana tuyaangalie kimakini kidogo, kama itaweza tuwe na national conversation, sisi wote wa Kenya tuwe kama one family, tupate solution ni nini.
He was not informed of the charges against him. However, he was booked under the charge of false publication and cyber harassment. These are some of the charges that the state has been using lately to curb on expression, freedom of expression on the social media platforms, which is a direct contradiction to the Constitution of Kenya, which under Article 33 guarantees the free expression of citizens.
From my perspective, it is what we are going through right now. Many youths are really being oppressed, and them speaking out does not mean that they are against the government. Them speaking out is the act of being a citizen, speaking out whatever we are feeling, actually. It's not out of context.
Right now, the family of Ephantus Mwangi, a matatu driver fatally shot during the Sabasaba protest in Kikuyu, is demanding justice, decrying what they describe as police brutality that robbed them of their loved ones. Speaking outside the St. Teresa Hospital mortuary, government pathologist Dr. Ndegwa revealed that an autopsy conducted on Mwangi's body showed he was shot once. Now, the bullet entered through the right side of his chest, perforated the lungs, passed into the abdomen, and severely damaged the liver and the omentum. Dr. Ndegwa added that Mwangi suffered extensive internal bleeding, and the bullet was successfully retrieved and handed over to authorities for further investigations. Grieving family members expressed deep anguish over Mwangi's death, saying he was not involved in the protest and had fallen victim of the excessive use of police force. Now, the called on the government to take immediate action, investigate the incident thoroughly, and hold those responsible accountable.
We have done the autopsy on the body of the late Ephantus Mwangi, and we have seen that he was shot once, the bullet entering the right chest cavity, perforating the lungs, going to the abdomen, lacerating the liver, and perforating also the omentum. And there is a lot of bleeding in the right chest cavity and in the abdomen. A lot of bleeding. The bullet did not come out. It was lodged in the right inguinal area, and we have managed to come out with it, which we have given to the investigating officers for ballistic, whatever they want to do with the bullet. So, cause of death, bleeding, a lot of bleeding, due to that single gunshot.
Kwa majina yangu ni Mary Wajiko, ninatoka upande ya Karao, katika jiji la Kadutura. Mtoto wangu alikuwa amepigwa risasi, na imekuwa uhakikisho kuwa alikuwa amepigwa risasi kwa sababu imetolewa na daktari. Ningependa kuambia wale wanatulia watoto wajue kwamba wao ni wazazi na wana watoto. Hiyo nimesema, hiyo mtoto wangu alifanywa kitendo cha unyama juu hakuwa na hatia, hakuwa mwizi, na hawa askari waliambiwa shoot and kill na wakafanya hivyo. Sasa wameniletea hasara, pressure, kila kitu wameniletea, na nimepoteza mtoto. Sasa hatuwezi shirikiana na serikali inatulia watoto. hiyo sio kazi, siwezi chukua hii serikali kama serikali nikiwa mtoto wangu ameuliwa na serikali.
My name is Julius Njoroge. I'm an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, and today we are here representing the family of the late Ephantus, who was killed by police officers during the recent demonstrations. We were accompanied by officers from IPOA and the family members. There was a pathologist who was doing the who led the operation, the postmortem, and bullet head was found to have lodged at the pelvic bone of the deceased. Quite unfortunate. So at this moment I want to extend my condolences to the family and all the other families who are mourning the loss of their loved ones. So it's quite unfortunate that we have witnessed massive loss of life in the recent demonstrations, both demonstrations, 25th July and 25th June and 7th July.
Now, in a move aimed at restoring stability and long-term sustainability in Kenya's sugar industry, the government has announced a temporary closure of all sugar milling operations in the upper and lower western regions for a period of 3 months beginning the July 11th of 2025. This directive comes as the newly enacted Sugar Development Levy takes effect, marking a coordinated strategy to rebuild the sector and phase out sugar imports by 2027. The closure, communicated in an official notice from the Kenya Sugar Board, targets key millers in Western Kenya, including the Zoya Sugar Company, Butali Sugar Mills, Western Kenya Sugar Company, and its Olepito and Natairi units, Mumias Sugar Limited of 2021 and Busia Sugar Industry Limited. The Sugar Board CEO, Jude Chesire, said the decision was reached after a stakeholders consultative meeting held on July 4th in Kisumu, which confirmed an acute shortage of mature sugarcane in both regions. The shortage, attributed to inadequate cane development planning, has led to widespread harvesting of immature cane and a drastic decline in sugar production in the first half of 2025.
Now, once we are stable, then now we can do away with the levy, because we'll have a revolving round fund. So this manual is supposed to actually guide us and tell us what is to be done. I know credit management sometimes can be a bit of a challenge. I'm happy that now the mills are 100% private sector driven. Our experiences in the past, when we had this fund, because of the governance issues in the public mills, a lot of money was pumped in the public mills, therefore also denying the private mills money that would have developed the industry. And when you look at the write-offs that were done, the 117 billion, majority of that money, I think around 50 billion, was money that had been disbursed to the government mills. I want to appreciate the millers. I want to appreciate the farmers. We are also interacting with farmers. As you know, part of what we hope to achieve with the Sugar Development Fund is also to capacitate farmers so that they understand, for example, the obligations with regard to the contracts that they sign with the millers. Because part of the problem we have had in this sector is, as the auntie correctly put it, we have very many farmers who do not honor the contracts, and I think it emanates from the fact that we have quite reinforced the contracts, because every contract must include provisions for rewards and punishment.
All right, it is exactly 33 minutes past the top of the hour. That we take a short breather here on the program. We'll be back in just a bit. All right, welcome back to the program. Let's take a look on what's making headlines on the dailies today. And I'm having the Star newspaper, the Daily Nation newspaper, and the Standard newspaper dated today, the 11th day of July 2025. Let's start with the Star newspaper. Top story on the Star newspaper says big push for Raila's 2027 presidential challenge. In logic, opposition raise without him would be all about hand president a smooth ride. Of course, let's take a look at this particular story on page 4 and 5 of the Star newspaper now. A quiet but determined campaign is underway to push ODM Raila Odinga, the ODM leader, to the 2027 presidential race and scuttle President William Ruto's bid for a second term. The Star can authoritatively reveal now the plot, spearheaded by a section of powerful Mount Kenya operatives, is gaining momentum with emissaries secretly dispatched to persuade Raila to mount what would be a final political offensive. Now, the logic, the ground is too hostile against President William Ruto, and any plot to scuttle his second term, including having Raila on the ballot, would easily be embraced by the agitated Central Kenya voters. Now, his recent announcement to lead the Saba Saba rally at Kamukonji is seen as part of efforts to reassert himself on the national stage. Further evidence of his political rehabilitation, or rather recalibration, and includes the opening of a private police, or rather a private office at Riverside Drive, Nairobi, where his potential candidacy is being quietly discussed and shaped. This is in addition to two other officers in Kileleshwa, or other offices in Kileleshwa and Upper Hill, and according to the highly placed sources privy to this, the confidential deliberations, the initiative enjoys the blessings of retired President Uhuru Kenyatta and the remnants of his Jubilee party. All right, shall be waiting to see that if actually the ODM leader, that is Raila Odinga, will be bidding for the 2027 presidential race, of course, in the year 2027. Moving on, matters politics. Shoot to maim Mr. President, that's not leadership, it's tyranny. Let's take a look at the story on page 8 of the Star newspaper. Now, a parliamentary committee says, and I beg your pardon, now Police Constable Clincy Barasa will face murder charges for the death of a mask vendor Boniface Karaoke after authorities completed investigations. Now, the High Court has already directed that Barasa be taken to Bagadi Hospital, Kenyatta National Hospital, or any convenient government facility for mental assessment before he pleads through the charges on July the 28th. Now, the directives were issued were issued after Barasa was arraigned before the court following this closure for miscellaneous file before the magistrate court that ordered his detention pending completion of investigations. Now, the prosecution asked that Barasa be remanded at Industrial Area Prison pending the mental assessment. Now, the officer was captured on camera shooting Karaoke at close range on Nairobi Street during the protest on June 17. Now, Karaoke was rushed to Kenyatta National Hospital with bullet pellets lodged in his brain, and doctors declared him brain dead 12 days later. He died the following day. Now, the mask vendor is to be buried on Friday, the June 11, which is actually today, in Murang'a County. Now, Masinde was with fellow officer Duncan Kiprono when he shot Karaoke, and both were in detention awaiting completion of investigations. Now, when the matter came up before the magistrate court for mention, the director of public prosecution said it had no case against Kiprono as he had not been implicated in the probe. Prosecutors instead said they would want Barasa to be arraigned before the High Court for the directions on the murder charge. He directed that Kiprono be set free. Of course, we shall be keeping tabs with that particular matter when, the Constable Barasa will be taking plea on July the 28th in the High Court. All right. Moving on, senators want number of chiefs officers kept to end over hiring. Now, governors could soon lose the discretion to appoint unlimited. A new proposal by the parliamentary committee is adopted and enacted into law. Of course, that's a story on page 7 of the Star newspaper. Now, page 6 of the Standard newspaper, Matters Politics, introduces as Matiang'i cancels tour of the Mount Kenya at the last minute. Of course, that's a story which actually yesterday Matiang'i said that he cancelled his tour because, he said there might be infiltration by goons to disrupt his tour. Let's take a look at the particular story on page 6. Says former Interior Cabinet Secretary and Fred Matiang'i has called off a much anticipated tour of Mount Kenya, sparking speculations about deeper political undercurrents surrounding his entry into active politics. Now, the 3-day tour scheduled to start on Thursday in Embu and Meru counties was abruptly cancelled as in what his team publicly described as precautionary measure following intelligence reports of planned disruptions. Now, sources claimed hired goons had been mobilized to attack Matiang'i's entourage and star chaos. However, insiders say the cancellation may have had less to do with security logistics and more with internal opposition dynamics. Now, there are indications that a section of opposition figures felt the tour perceived a soft launch of Matiang'i's 2027 ambitions and risked projecting disunity, especially in the absence of a broader united front. And according to the sources close to Matiang'i, the former CS was scheduled to hold a series of meetings with clergy, grassroots leaders, and opinion shapers, with the gatherings framed as part of a listening mission. But political observers and rivals had already branded the tour a thinly veiled presidential campaign maneuver. PNU party leader and close ally of Matiang'i, Peter Munya, claimed the state operatives had mobilized militia groups to infiltrate and disrupt the meetings. Right? That was up on Matters Politics on the Star newspaper. And AG wants graft cases concluded in just 1 year if you are accused of corrupt dealings. A new law proposed by the Attorney General now requires that you know your fate within a year, including determination of appeals. Now, that's a story on page 11 of the Star newspaper. Let's take a look on what's making headlines on the Daily Nation newspaper dated today, the 11th day of July 2025. And top story on the Daily Nation says IBC 2027 test starts. Now, conduct a full in a tray. Now, the Daily Nation has actually segmented these issues into 5. Number 1, conduct 22 pending by-elections. There have been vacancies in some wards and constituencies after the death of some MCAs and MPs, nullification of election results and appointments to the cabinet. There is 1 vacancy in the Senate, 6 for MPs and 15 for MCAs. Now, register new voters. A mass registration of voters as well as a cleanup for the voter register must be conducted ahead of the polls. Now, boundary delimitation. Article 89, sub-article 2 of the Constitution states that IEBC shall review the names and boundaries of the constituencies at intervals of not less than 8 years and not more than 12 years. The last review was done in 2012. The timelines for the delimitation of boundaries lapsed in March 2024. Moving on, number 4, conduct continuous voter education. The Commission is expected to enhance public awareness of electoral processes ahead of the general elections. Number 5, procure elections materials. Now, new voter registration software and systems are needed ahead of the elections, as the IEBC says. The ones used in previous elections have reached the end of the expected industry support for life cycle. Now, the High Court judges that to uphold the rule of law, the legitimacy of the IEBC to the people of Kenya, and illegality cannot be the foundation of legitimacy. Right, moving on, the High Court yesterday quashed President William Ruto's Gazette notice appointing the IEBC chairman and 6 commissioners, but at the same time cleared the way for him to gazette them afresh after throwing out all petitions against the poll team. This now paves the way for the new electoral officials to take office and get down to hard work and preparing, of course, for the next general elections. Let's take a look at that particular story on page 4 and 5 of the Star newspaper now. In the corridors of justice, full in tray for the new IBC chiefs as court throws out petition. Now, the High Court quashed President William Ruto's, of course, appointment of Erasta Thedang Edakon as Independence Electoral and Boundaries Commission chairperson and 6 others as commissioners for breaching the interim order, halting their gazettement and formal appointment. Now, the court, however, upheld the president's nomination for the 7 persons and dismissed a petition to nullify their selection of alleged violation of the constitution. Now, the 7 of the Mr. Edakon and Anderito Moses Alutalala and Mary Karen Sorobit, Hassan Nur Hassan, Francis Odhiambo Adul, and Fahima Arafat Abdallah. In a judgment they delivered yesterday, 3-judge bench comprising of Justice Rosaline Aburili, John Chigiti, and Bahati Mamuye said the president appointed the 7 in contravention of an order issued on May the 29th of 2025, barring the appointment and gazettement pending determination of a petition filed by 2 Kenyans. Now, the bench said court orders are not merely suggestions, and any action taken in contravention of a court order is null and has no legal effect. Now, President Ruto gazetted the 7 names on June 10th through 2 gazette notices, a move that escalated the legal challenge initiated by Mr. Kevin Roy Omondi and Boniface Mwangi. According to the judges, the president should have complied with the court's order by waiting for conclusion of court proceedings. Right? Now, the court said there was no evidence that the nominees were ineligible or there was no regional balance. And according to the court, the former provinces were not constitutionally recognized, and the court could not analyze the background of the nominees based on the provinces. Hence, the court found that there was no evidence to show that more than one nominee was from the same community or region. All right? That's what's up in the corridors of justice matters, IBC. Let's take a look on what's making headlines in the political arena. Now, silent wars rock the opposition over its flag bearer. Now, beneath the surface of publicized unity, disputes in the opposition coalition now threaten to derail plans for a joint presidential flag bearer in 2027. The team has at least 6 political outfits: former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, Democracy for Citizens Party, Kalonzo Musyoka's Wiper Party, or rather Wiper People's Liberation Party for Martha Karua, and Eugene Wamalwa's Democratic Action Party, that's the DAPK, and Justin Muturi, Jubilee and former President Uhuru Kenyatta, represented by National Chairman Torome Saitoti and former Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i. Mr. Gachagua has, however, dismissed talk of cracks and vowed to ensure President Ruto loses the 2027 vote. All right. Now let's take a look on what's making headlines in the courts. Now, Chief Kadhi lives behind a ridge, Chief Kadhi, that's Muslim faithful, was actually buried yesterday. Now, Chief Kadhi lives behind a rich legacy of humility and selflessness. Now, the death of Chief Kadhi, Sheikh Abdulrahman Hussein Athman, yesterday, after a long battle with illness, marked the end of a quiet yet profound chapter in his religious and judicial life. Of course, let's take a look what Chief Kadhi was actually doing. Now, Chief Kadhi was saying during a press briefing in Mombasa, there's a picture there of him in Mombasa in the year 2024, April 10th. Now, the death of Chief Kadhi Sheikh Abdul Halim Hussein Athman yesterday marked the end of a quiet yet profound chapter in his religious and judicial life. Revered for his humility, wisdom, and devotion to justice, he leaves behind a legacy that touched courts, religious institutions, and countless lives across the Muslim community. Sheikh Abdullah Halim, who died surrounded by family, had for months battled an illness that saw him admitted to hospitals in Nairobi and India. Even during treatment, his family and those who interacted with him say he remained devoted to his work and faith. Right, born in Watamu, Kilifi County, Sheikh Abdul Halim attended Watamu Primary School and Malindi High School, where relatives recall him as calm, respectful, and an outstanding student. His father, Ustad Hussein Adman, remembered him not only as a leader, but as a dutiful son. He leaves behind a wife and 3 children. Of course, may his soul rest in peace. All right, let's take a look on what's making headlines actually in sports. And Wanyonyi eyeing something special in the star-studded race. Now the world will be treated to a thrilling spectacle in the athletics tonight. When Olympics 800 meters champion Emmanuel Wanyonyi launches what promises to be his own push for a world record. Of course, there's a story on page 31 of the Daily Nation dated today. Of course, let's take a look on what's making headlines in the Star newspaper before we wrap it up. Now, the Standard, or rather the Standard newspaper says in the dock alone. That's the headline in the Standard newspaper dated today, the 11th July of 2025. Now, President William Ruto ordered police to shoot and maim Reuters. Earlier, Interior CS Kipchumba Murkomen had posted that he would stand by any officer accused of manhandling protesters, even if the charge was murder. He declared he was a lawyer and would defend them to the end. But when Clinzy Masinde sat in the dock accused of shooting an unarmed hawker, there was no presidential, or rather no president or minister. He covered his tear-streaked face, overwhelmed by the gravity of the charges. The world he once knew was gone. And in that crushing moment, he was utterly alone. Of course, the story on page 4 and 5, of course, of the Star newspaper. And there is a picture there of the alleged murderer of Brian Kariuki, who is actually being buried today. There is a picture there of the suspected officer, and pictures there also of, the police shooting the mask vendor in the Nairobi streets. Quite a saddening state to be in Kenya right now. Of course, that's a story you can get on page 4 and 5 of the Standard newspaper. Of course, you'll remember that Clinzy Barasa will be taking plea in the High Court on the 28th of July 2025. And of course, the court said that he be assessed the mental state before he takes plea in the court, of course, in July 28th of this year, that is in 2025. Of course, we shall be keeping tabs with that particular story, and we shall be bringing you, of course, in our subsequent bulletins later on in the course of this month. And alarm as more newborns contract HIV from breastfeeding. Of course, there's a feature story there done by the Star. Now, the number of newborns infected with HIV in the country is on the rise despite ongoing efforts to curb mother-to-child transmission. Now, a new report by the National AIDS and STIs Control Program and UNAIDS and the Joint United Nations Program says that many infants are contracting the virus during the breastfeeding. Now, report released yesterday during a consultative meeting that brought together various players in the health sector at Nairobi Hotel, also notes that early infant diagnosis and access to treatment remains worryingly low. Of course, that's a story you can get in page 2 of the Standard newspaper. Of course, High Court, or rather the court nullifies IEBC gazettement. The High Court has overturned President William Ruto's gazettement of the IEBC and the 6 commissioners for defying the interim court order, with the judges stating that their directions must not be treated as mere suggestions. Of course, that's a story on page 7 of the Standard newspaper. It is exactly 1 minute past the top of the hour. Taking a short breather here on the program, but we'll be back in just a few.